to the Vulnerable Women podcast. Man, oh man, it has been, I guess it's probably been about a good 4 weeks since we've done a new episode. So, my husband and I, we went to San Diego for a week for his work, came back, I got sick, and then I'm trying to think, the week after that, I think my daughter had something, and then the week after that, I got sick again. So it has just been a wild 4 weeks, but I'm so glad to be back with you guys. Zay, how have you been?
Great.
Yeah. So
the cold is behind us.
Yes, but now it's pouring down rain. Hopefully you can't hear it. But yeah, today it's pouring down rain. I went to walk out to my car, and my husband, he parked it kind of right by this tree, and that tree puts shade out so it doesn't grow grass under there. So when I'm walking to the car, I don't have any sidewalk to step on. So when I stepped, I mean, just right in the mud. I mean, I felt like my shoe like slip and dig in. So it's been an eventful morning around here. Then we got to do the fun, school car rider line in the rain. I'm sure if any of you other parents get to do that, it's just wonderful. God bless all you drivers out there. It's a mess. So that's just kind of where we've been and what we've been up to. We have not forgotten about you at all. It's just been a whirlwind last month. I hope you had a wonderful Valentine's Day, and I hope you felt loved during that time. So this morning, during that 4 weeks that kind of we didn't do a new episode, I'll be frank, I was struggling with a lot of things, and that's not why I didn't do the episode. This is what was going on in my life. I felt I was going through a phase of kind of feeling very overwhelmed. I had moved with my job to a different company. I wasn't feeling real great during that time. My dad was getting ready to go into surgery, and so I was trying to figure out when I could go and stay with them and get a flight, and we all know those aren't cheap. And so, working that out with my husband and, when I could go and when I would come back and with, my work and how I would do that and just, juggling all the balls in the air that you have, as a mom, as a wife, and, because everything I do affects my family. And I was talking to Jeremy, and I just told him, we were sitting in bed, and I said, I'm just feeling so overwhelmed right now. I said, I feel like I have so many things up in the air, and it's almost like I don't know which one to do first. Well, a big part of my job is prioritizing. So I always feel like I'm really pretty good at it on my work life, but it was seeming like in my personal life, I was having a really hard time, keeping priorities straight. And he said to me, babe, well, your problem is, and I always love it when my husband starts out a conversation like that, but he said, baby, your problem is you're trying to organize your problems by the small detail. And I kind of looked at him like, what in the world are you talking about? That's what you're supposed to do. Like, he meant like, so kids have to be here. I've got to go wash the dishes. I've got to do laundry, by the small task. What he was saying is you've got to start prioritizing by the bigger picture. And so I said, well, can you explain a little bit more? Because I'm kind of lost. And I'm sure during that time I was probably giving him the side eye, I would guess. We all don't love to hear something that maybe we're not doing it right. Of course, he always says it in a loving way. He really does. But he said, if God is number one, anything that has to do with God goes first. Then if it has to do with family, and then if it has to do with work and other, start putting them in those boxes. And then that's where you kind of go for each one. So in other words, family doesn't come before God, right? And then work doesn't come before family, things like that. And, when you get overwhelmed and you've got so many things going, it's almost hard to know sometimes, like, okay, am I over prioritizing some things when I shouldn't? And so when he kind of put that into perspective for me, it kind of changed my viewpoint on how I was handling all the things in my life. Because I was actually thinking, with my dad and his surgery, I thought, I'm not going to go. I've started this new job. And then I was talking. He said, "Why are you not going?" I said, "Well, I just started this new job." And he said, "Right, but then you're putting work above family." And that really convicted my heart. And I thought, he's right. I need to choose family over work. That's just, how God wants it. That's what the Bible commands us to do. I'm going to read a scripture. It's in Matthew 6:33. It says, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, his way of doing and being right, and then all these things taken together will be given to you." Just the NIV version says, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." So if we will put God first, all the other things that I was struggling with juggling, they'll just fall right into place. But I had so many things going on. I was so tired that I was kind of setting like my Bible reading off to the side because I was just like, oh, I'm so tired. I just want to stay in bed. But that was the wrong way to look at it. That should have been the first thing that I did before I juggled all these other things. And it's hard. It's hard for all of us to juggle all the things in life. And the reason I tell you that story is because I wasn't prioritizing my life correctly. I was trying to keep them all the first priority. And that's just not possible. You can't keep everything first. There's just no way. It's not humanly possible. That's what I was trying to do in my mind. I wanted to keep everything first. A lot of us have our priorities messed up. I was one of them, and I still struggle with it. Things that we put in front of our walk with God, or things that we put in front of our family or our spouse. At nighttime when I go to bed, and I've done this for years, I even asked Jeremy, I said, "How long do you think I've been doing that?" And he says, "A long time." Okay, there's a hair in my mouth. And I asked him to think, kind of back, and I guess it was probably maybe, I don't know, 8, 9 years ago. At nighttime, I turn a TV show on my phone when I lay down at night when I'm trying to fall asleep. And the reason I started doing that is because it distracts my mind. It distracts my mind from all the things of the day. I'm not thinking about work, or I'm not thinking about all the things that the kids have going on. I'm not thinking, oh, did I do this or I do that? It takes my mind off of those things. But God convicted me because I was instead of using my rest time just to kind of listen and hear his voice, I was listening to TV shows. And I felt really guilty about it. So I stopped. I stopped watching the TV shows at night. But oddly enough, now I've started waking up a lot. I've been waking up at like 3:30 in the morning. And I was thinking, and again, speaking to my husband, as we all do if we have a spouse, I told him, I said, "Man, ever since I've stopped doing that, I haven't been sleeping good." And he goes, "Well, of course you haven't." I said, "Why?" And he said, "It's because the devil wants you to go back to what you were doing. He wants you to go back to listen to the TV show instead of trying to rest in God." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." I mean, even this morning, I woke up at 3:30, and I did good. I didn't pick up my phone. I just kind of laid there. I said, "Lord, if you want to tell me something, go ahead. But can you hurry? Because I really want to go back to sleep." Because I think I had an hour before I had to get up. I usually get up around 4:30 so I can help my daughter. But I'm determined. I'm not going to do that anymore because I want to be in his presence. I want my nighttime when my husband's asleep and my kids asleep. I want it to be about just listening and hearing him, because we get so busy and caught up in social media and TV and all the things, and they're infiltrating us most of the time. And we get so busy in that we're failing to hear, or I was failing to hear his voice. I wasn't resting in him. I was trying to rest in a TV show that was going to distract my mind. But why can't God be my distraction in a good way? And when is your house the quietest? When is it just silent? At night? Once if you have children, once your kids go to bed, if you're married, if your spouse falls asleep first, or sometimes maybe your spouse might be in the other room, and you can just be in peace for a little bit and just ask God to remove all your worries, all the things from your mind, just to put you at peace. Another thing God really convicted me of is social media time. Now, we all know I love social media, but, and I say that, kind of smarty pants, I guess. But I like to scroll through it. I don't like to really post unless it's about my kids. Zay's always telling me, he's like, you need to post more on social media. I'm like, yeah, but I suck at it. I'm terrible at it. It's just not my thing. But to grow and everything. He's like, you got to post. I'm like, I'm trying. I'm really bad, but I'm trying. But, a lot of us, including myself, get up in the morning. What's the first thing you do? I grab my phone. My alarm is on my phone. I can see what time it is on my phone. Well, once my alarm goes off, I pick up my phone, and what do? I swipe up and I click on something. Facebook, Instagram, whatever else, And I heard, I believe it was Billy Graham's son is who I believe it was. I don't think it was Billy Graham himself. He spoke a message, and it said I think it was called 4 Things That God Hates. And I just by happen, I don't go listen to him on purpose. I didn't go look him up. What I was doing is I was going on YouTube. I was trying to find a song that I wanted to listen to, and it was in my For You. It says 4 Things God Hates. And I was like, that's interesting. So I clicked on it. And I listened to the whole thing, but the one thing I remember, the first thing he said is God hates it when you wake up in the morning and pick up your phone before you talk to him. When you choose your cell phone over him first. And I'm like, that was like a stab in the heart for me. Because even though I get up at 4:30, I still pick up my phone first because that's where my alarm is. And so I'll sit in bed for a minute and I'll scroll through social media. And so I was just sat there and I was like, wow. It struck me really hard. So in the mornings now when I get up, I really try not to, I turn my alarm off and I try not to get on my phone. When I sit down to read my Bible, I set my phone somewhere else and I make sure it's on silent or vibrate. So that's been a tough one, I'm not going to lie. I don't know, it's become such a habit. And social media can be such a time suck, and it can be a relationship killer. I read a statistic that said 80% of people asked believe social media impacts their relationship in a negative way, and the most common response was infidelity. I think sometimes people can spend a lot of time on social media, message people maybe they shouldn't, things like that. Imagine if that many people think that social media affects their relationship in a negative way. Imagine what it can do to your relationship with God. If social media is hitting 80% of relationships, marriages, whatever type of relationship, friendship, imagine what it's doing to your relationship with God. I remember when TikTok went down, my daughter came in and she was like, Mom, oh my gosh, TikTok's down. And she's showing me the screenshot where it's down. And I said, okay. She's like, you're not upset? I was like, well, number one, I don't have TikTok. But I said, no. I said, I'd be just fine without social media. I think sometimes because it can consume our time. Now, I am not sitting here saying we should, ban social media or anything like that. But social media is a good thing in a lot of ways, to promote businesses, to promote podcasts, if I would, actually do it. Things like that. So it's a way to share pictures of your kids, of your family, for people who don't maybe live near you that you want to share. So it can be a good thing if it's prioritized correctly. That's the thing. We've got to be careful with our priorities. In Romans 12:2, it says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." And last night I asked myself these same questions. Do you think social media transforms your mind in a good way, like the Bible says? Does social media make you think good things? Does it transform your mind? And my answer was no, it doesn't. You know, I love seeing my friends' posts about their kids and family and their achievements. I love that, but there's so much negativity on social media. So that was a no answer for me. And then do you think it helps you discern the will of God for you? My answer again was no for me. And I want to start putting things in my life that put God first. I'm not getting rid of my social media or anything like that. It's just me learning how to prioritize all the things, and that includes social media. So you have to examine your heart. You have to decide for yourself, what am I not prioritizing correctly? What am I not doing that's not keeping God first, my family second, whatever that looks like for you. But one thing I know is God should always be first. You know, he definitely showed me, like for me with my nighttime routine, to use it in a positive way. You know, a lot of times I'll lay down in bed at night and I'm like, ugh, it feels so good to lay down in bed, but tomorrow's, Monday or whatever. I've used it in more of a negative, dreadful way. And now when I lay down, I'm trying to use it in more of a positive way in my relationship with the Lord. Another example I want to give you about priorities, and again, you guys, I want you to hear my heart here. These things that I share with you, it's not because I'm trying to aim it at you. I'm trying to share with you my struggle and what I learned. These are things that God has convicted me of, and I'm just hoping that you too can grow from it, because I certainly have. So please hear my heart there. Another example, extracurricular activities with your kids. I know a lot of you on here, you're not necessarily married or have kids, so this may not apply to you. Now, when I was young, extracurriculars, yes, you did them like dance, soccer, baseball, football, whatever. But it was all like, I'm trying to think what you call it, but it wasn't competitive like it is now. It was just like recreational. It was something you just did that was extra. Well, now everything has a competitive side or a select side or whatever, because all of these kids, they want to be professional athletes or dancers. And so there's so many opportunities that they give kids to be able to grow in that area, or they want to play college football or whatever that looks like. A few years ago, my oldest daughter, she's a dancer, and she was on their competitive team, and there was a time when she was dancing 7 days a week. And my husband, I remember him saying, I just don't like this. I feel like I never see you. And, me being a mom, I'm protective of my daughter's, love of dance. And I said, it's not that big a deal. Like, it'll be fine. You do see me, making the excuses. And then I started to see my daughter lose her love for dance and things like that. I mean, we were even up there on Sunday afternoons, which Sunday is typically like a family day for most people, but we were at dance, and this is before she could drive. So it was 30 minutes there and 30 minutes back. And one day she came out and got in the car and she was just crying. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she didn't answer. And I said, "Do you not want to do this anymore?" And she said, "No, I don't." And we got home and discussed it. Long story short, she decided not to do it anymore. She just kind of went and took some classes for fun and kind of grew her love back. And now she dances for her high school and things like that, and just does it in a positive way. But looking back as a parent, I so wish that I would have saw that sooner. I so wish that I wouldn't have prioritized that over everything else. Because I was letting that control everything in our life. I was letting it control my family life and being away from my youngest daughter and my husband. I even had a pillow in my car, and she would be in there and I would lay my seat back and take a nap. I mean, that's how much we were there. It was just a lot. And, looking back, I wish I would have done things differently. So hopefully, as a parent, if your kids are in different things, prioritize what's important for them. Because what you choose for them, now they may not love your decision, but in the long run, they'll be thankful. So I just caution you with those things to make sure that you're prioritizing the right things. Now, I know a lot of you are probably going to roll your eyes at me on that one, or say, well, we manage it just fine, or I do have my God time, or whatever. If kids' sports start taking away from your time with God and family, it's time to re-examine. It's time to take another look at how you're prioritizing your life. Sit down with your spouse, pray about it. If you're married, if you're single, pray about it with God and just talk to Him and let Him speak to your heart. I think sometimes in society, that's what's so messed up right now is our priorities are all wrong. We used to be one nation under God. Now we're just one nation. Well, are we even one nation? I typically don't say political things, but that's just kind of what comes to my mind. I didn't write that down, but it's just our priorities have changed as a country, as individuals. And if we would be a person that kept God first in everything, think how different this world would be. We would live in a totally different place than we do now. Exodus 20, verse 3, it says, "You shall have no other gods before me." And I think a lot of people, when they hear that verse, they think like idols, but anything could be a god. It could be your kids' sports. It could be TV shows. It could be your job. It could be, I don't know, maybe you like to, I don't know what you like to do on the weekends. Maybe it could be a band or concerts or I don't know, whatever it is that you like to do. Sometimes we have a tendency to make those things our God, our thing that we spend the most time on. And we've got to be careful with that. And I say that to myself as well. These things in our life become gods, and we don't even realize it. I look back at my daughter's dance, and that's what that was becoming. It was becoming more of a god in my home than it was just an extracurricular. And I wasn't putting God first. You can have the best of both worlds. You just may have to pull back just a little bit on some things. And why do we let these things become priorities? I'm going to speak for myself here. It distracts me from other things. It distracts my mind from a little bit of the chaos in my life or whatever it is that's going on in my work or my kids or, whatever else extra that we have. It just keeps my mind thinking of other things instead of the craziness that's going on. As my husband says, it's my nothing box. That's what he likes to call it when he likes to play this game on his phone. And he says, that's my nothing box when he comes home while we're, maybe getting ready for dinner. And he can kind of zone out. Sometimes I wish I could zone out like that where I didn't hear anything. But he says, that's my nothing box. But, I had a thought come to my mind last night as I was studying. Why can't God be our nothing box? He's the perfect nothing box. Think of how peaceful it could be to let God sink into our minds and into our hearts and be in our nothing box. What a peace that would be. We don't have to be busy all the time. It's okay to say no to things. It's okay to not, with your kids, not run them to this sport, that sport, and every sport. It's okay. We've always been big believers in letting our children choose one thing. Always, one thing. Because my husband and I didn't want to spend our time running kids here, there, and everywhere. Now, we did let our daughter choose one thing, and it still wound up consuming our life at one point. But we figured it out. God showed us through our daughter, that we weren't prioritizing correctly. So I say all this to say, make sure you're keeping your priorities right, God first. And if you do that, everything else will fall into place. That was my mistake. I was trying to prioritize it by a due date or something like that, instead of saying, okay, does this have to do with God? Then that's what goes first in my life. So I encourage you today, keep God first. Manage your priorities. Go to Him about it. See what you need to fix, because that's what I'm doing right now. I hope you guys have a good day. And remember, let down your guard and be vulnerable with God. I love you.